Okay, so welcome to Monk Bruce Audio with me, Ramanuj Kashyap, and once again we are here with another budget IEM. And when I say budget, I do not mean the USD 75 to $100 or in Indian terms around 9 to 10,000 rupees, but budget means it's truly budget. It's budget enough to get you a nice gourmet meal at a fine dining restaurant. I think a 3 course would be appropriate. I don't know. So yeah, the category of this IEM's pricing is enough to buy you some food and groceries, and believe me, it's not that bad sounding. And it's from a brand that I have been chasing for quite some time, and although nothing has materialized on the commercial front, at least I have the support of TheAudioStore in India for letting me opine and ramble about the brand's offerings. So shout out to Pritam Halpawat from TheAudioStore for being such a kind endorser to my adventures in reviewing. So anyway, this is going to be the anyway, Tangly Wires. This is going to be the EarAcoustics X ZKaai Cipher. I think it's a collab between EarAcoustic and ZKaai, and there are two versions of it. One you would find usually with a silver faceplate with blue-black shells, and this one, as you can see, this comes in a striking carbon fiber-esque red, silver, black gradient, and it's actually a very good looking IEM for the price. So let's keep the segment short and catch me up on what I have to say about the good, the bad, and the ugly about the EarAcoustic Cipher. See you in the sound section. So now that we are in the sound section, let's start off with the usual baseline, the lows, and then the mids and the highs. And that's actually going to be the every sound segment of a Monk Bruce audio sound review. And so without further ado, let's begin with how the lows are on the EarAcoustic Cipher. And this time I have broken the aspects of sound into two parts, given how my priorities in the track list are. So this time I'm going to start off a bit different. So when it comes to presenting the lows in an absolute non-sterile, non-clinical, non-analytical, fun way, which is demonstrated by tracks like Rush's Limelight and The Spirit of Radio, the Cipher had kind of a surprising take on it. And believe me when I say this, because the Cipher is actually branded as a gaming-centric IEM, and I never have a lot of high hopes for offerings that are usually branded that way. But again, I have to repeat this, that the Cipher had me surprised. I choose Limelight and The Spirit of Radio to judge the tactility and nimbleness of how the bass is with regards to other elements of the track or the tracks that I listen to. And let me just start out by saying this, that the Cipher doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in me that it is going to be something that is actually to be considered a rival of the established juggernauts in this budget segment. The Cipher doesn't really have the decay figured out, as I felt that the bass lines felt a bit too snappy. And sometimes when I was trying to focus on the attack, the notes had simply evaporated. So this brings me to the question that what was EarAcoustic thinking when they were trying to tune the Cipher, at least in this regard? Because if on one hand I'm feeling that the decay is being too fast, and when I try to judge the attack, the note is already gone, what am I supposed to base my opinion on when it comes to opining on the bass? Like, do I talk about the notes? Do I talk about the feeling? Do I talk about the technicalities? I don't know. Also not bad, by the way, because I'll tell you why. I had applied the wrong ear tips on it. I had a K-Bear Coffee short wides, and those are not recommended. So let me just pull up the Cipher out. These are the final ear E, but not the regular ones. These are the short ones which are meant for true wireless buds, and they work wonderfully with the Cipher. And once I had these ear tips in, it was a drastic change in picture, and I could finally feel the clarity in it. This is a two-way street. It's based upon the tuning as well as the ear tips that you are trying to use with the Cipher, and you need to tip roll quite a bit to extract the most out of the Cipher, like I did, and I went through a bunch of ear tips and I settled on this one. So keeping all that aside, once I had these on, the clarity and the amount of details that the Cipher was presenting me with was finally coming to light. I was finally being happy listening to the IEM, and finally I could hear the panning of the toms and the Cipher trying to cohesively present it with the kicks, and it does so for the most part. Like, I could clearly distinguish between the toms and the kicks while the bass was trying to let itself recognize, and I could actually understand the notes, but it was not that prominent for me. And this is the only issue that I have now that I finally figured the Cipher out, is how subdued the notes are from the bass line, and when they come off, which is kind of like a bit of identity would have worked. And this faintly reminded me of another IEM, the Keyfine or the Caffeine Clean SV, where I could feel that the notes from the bass lines, apart from the drums, could have used a bit more distinction. And shifting the gear to tracks like Daft Punk's Get Lucky and Instant Crush, which are two of my picks to gauge how the bass behaves when it gets thick. Cipher has some amount of bloat, for which makes me again say that the attack is sluggish, and this leads to an adverse perception of the decay. But the consolation here is that the quantity of the Cipher doesn't alter the vocals or the rest of the elements negatively. Like, the bloat is going on in one end, and there is some confusion regarding the perception of the elements in what goes into the lows. But when I try to focus on the mids and the highs, or the vocals here for that particular matter, the Cipher was doing a good job in maintaining the isolation between both. And I still acknowledge that the quantity of the bass could have been downsized by a good notch, and this is where EQ comes in. Otherwise, it was a decent experience, I would say. And across moments, I felt that the vocals felt slightly more rolled off than what I would prefer. So this is a very rocky start for the Cipher. Let's see how the mids are on this IEM. So just stick with me, just for a little while. Okay, so without letting myself give you what tracks that I'm using to opine on the Cipher regarding the mid-range, I'm just going to go with the flow again, and there's a pun intended given what track that I've chosen. So the Cipher behaves completely different in tracks like Queens of the Stone Age's First It Giveth, where now the thick or bloated lows, which hampered my previous listening, is now serving the cause just right. It's hammering on in tandem with the rapid-fire two-stroke engine-esque, I would say, that the track snare is, because it goes around like that way. It's drawing quick breaths and it's firing on, and you could say that it can remind you of a machine gun or a Thompson, whatever it might be. And to throw on to this track's complexity, it's also set in a key of B flat major. And I'm of the opinion that the Cipher got the tonality right here. Yes, I could have used a whisker's worth of reduction in the warmth, but no way would I say that it was conflicting with the overall mix. Guitars feel adequately balanced, where some energy could not have really ruined the presentation. So for the most part, I would say that they sounded just like this should, and there's nothing extraordinary about it, but a bit more weight to the notes of the guitars wouldn't have really hampered the whole perception. I'm also happy to report that the Cipher is another IEM which knows my priorities in imaging in this track, where I complacently heard the cymbals go parallel to the vocals while neither being too forward nor being too pushed back. I think this is where their marketing of the Cipher being a gaming IEM comes into play, because if you are marketing something as a gaming IEM, you need to really have excellent imaging. Anyway, keeping that aside, the Cipher also doesn't skimp out on bloat detail, and I observed this when I was trying to gauge if I could hear the rumbling of the drums in the intro of Tool's Lateralus, where once the bass line is established, it holds its ground very well. Maynard's vocals could have used a touch of weight to make the presentation more grandiose, more full, more regal, dramatic, whatever adjective feels right in how Lateralus makes you feel. But I would say that guitars once again felt adequate for the most part. Like a bit of note weight again couldn't have hampered the mix, but for the most part it's okay. Nothing too bad, nothing too good either. The bloat, however, comes back, and it was definitely affecting the later part of the vocals. Like just before the guitar solo starts, and all the things happen from the 6 minute 50-second mark. But that disappointment quickly goes out when I could hear every stroke, every hit from the conclusion of the breakdown as Danny Carey goes crazy over the rudiments, and then again Maynard soldiers on with the whining bass, and here the bass comes off very polished, like there is no bloat again. So I'm just seeing myself in the mirror and trying to figure out if I'm deranged or if I'm, like going mad, because what is this inconsistency? Like you can hear the bloat come off in certain tracks, but in a different set of tracks, I'm like, where bloat? This is a clean IEM. So this is what is making me kind of frustrated with the Cipher. But let me in you on something. When I judged the highs on this IEM, I felt that I was being too harsh. So stick with me, just for a little while. So through the highs, I would like to tell you one thing, that if there is something that one of my best friends in this hobby, Croydon, has taught me, is that never ever compromise on the quality of the files or the artists that you listen to. And thanks to him, I found out two damn good artists who have taught me a lot about the perceived quality of music and what I should listen to when I'm specifically reviewing gear. Because in my dictionary, in my list, I would say that gear, your track list for analysis should be different from your track list of recreation. One should not be mixed with the other. And believe me, I'll be uploading a certain section on this where you will find me talking about this in depth. Anyway, so in tracks with impeccable masterings and a different level of technical proficiency, like Patricia Barber's Inchworm, I could not find a single shred of fatigue or pierce in the textures of Patricia's vocals, which are amazing to begin with. It's very lush. It makes you wear a mink coat instead of, like something that you might have picked off from the thrift market. It's that lush. So I could not find a single shred of fatigue or pierce. And the way Patricia enunciates her 16, 16 and 32 part, 16, 16 and 32, kind of like that. It's the melodies like that. And it comes around in the 3-minute 50-second mark. There's no sibilance to be found with the Cipher. And I'm borderline impressed with the way the Cipher handles the timbre on the percussion with the faint sizzle of cymbals that makes me believe that certain aspects with regards of the tuning of this IEM was figured out just right by EarAcoustic. And this is the most impressive part of the Cipher. It was not in Patricia Barber, it was in Dave Brubeck's Take 5, where I simply cannot say that the previously consistent bloat was a hindrance in... I'm observing the first... the drawing of the breaths on the horns with a remarkable control of timbre, and the cymbals being sizzling, shimmery, and the pianos, they were coming together in such a cohesive manner that neither of the elements were trying to outshine the other. But from the aspect of imaging, I would say that the Ciphers had the horns positioned a bit more forward than I've heard on different IEMs on the same track. Like the Cipher had established that the horns were the frontment of this melodious march, and I'm not complaining about it. I just wish that the level of detail that the elements had in the Cipher extended to the bass as well, where I felt that the quantity was just being a hindrance. This is an excellent track and you want all the elements in the right amounts, and the Cipher got most of it right, and the part that it didn't get right, it was the bass, and the bloat comes back again, although it's not very pronounced or drastic compared to what I heard in Get Lucky or Instant Crush or in that genre. And someone actually may take it for being quite punchy, and they won't be wrong, but for me it's bloat. And the last thing I would like to say here is that slightly more pronunciation through the resonance of the toms and the kicks when the drum solo kick comes in. It could have been a bit, like dramatic or more enhanced or more in focus, because I felt that it was falling a bit flat. So that's about it for the sound impressions of the Cipher. Let's move on to the comparisons and the two questions that I ask to conclude every IEM. So just that last part is left. Okay, so now here's for the comparisons of the Cipher with some of the IEMs that are dominating in this segment. Let's start off with the most immediate rival, and despite being flawed, it's a favorite of mine. Let me just show it to you right here. The Twistura Delta. Both the Delta and the Cipher kind of share an awkward struggle down lows. They both have their issues fighting out their priorities when it comes to attack and decay, where the Cipher felt sluggish, and when I said that the notes of the Cipher felt like they were evaporating before I could focus on them, Delta retains all of that, but it's just the execution of the notes of the lows where I felt that the Delta was being wobbly, and the Delta also suffers from subjectively thin vocals, and it can come off faintly shouty through the upper mids. Cipher completely avoids this trap, where I felt that comparatively it was quite smooth, and there was no sibilance, no signs of tears or fatigue, where the Delta felt a bit shouty. Again, it's just a matter of preference. If someone wants a more deliberate punch, it's kind of like a dirty spillage of soda in your favorite beverage, then the Cipher will feel a better bet on this regard. But if you want a fair amount of polish while still being somewhat acceptably fun shouting, then I would recommend the Delta over the Cipher. And when it comes to opining upon the Keyfine brothers, I would say the Clean and the Clean SV, it gave me, like, when I said that the notes were kind of through the lows, some of the notes, the way the Cipher presented, it kind of felt like it reminded me of the Keyfine Clean SV. I would say that that's where almost all the similarities between the two IEMs die, because if I were to look at the mid-range and the highs from a complete analytical standpoint, they go in completely opposite direction. The Clean SV suffers from a noticeably thin mid-range, and vocals just comparatively lacked life, and it kind of leaned on to again being shouty and sibilant. And if I were to pick up the OG Keyfine Clean, I would say that the Cipher makes the OG Clean sound dirtier. It's bloated, it's shouty, and it's harsh. The Cipher might carry on with its own flaws, but when it comes to the other elements of the sound, I think the Cipher does a far better job compared to this version of the Clean. And once again, I say that the nozzle proposition that Keyfine has, I think they really need to stop with it, because they need to focus on nailing the fundamental tuning right, rather than giving all these copium mechanisms in the form of nozzles, I would say. And here's where anything good or preferential that I might have to say regarding the Cipher ends, and when it's being compared with the Opus X OP22, where I have the box of it. This is the Opus OP22 box, and I'll show you the IEMs later in one of my videos on how the IEM is. And anyway, I'm comparing it with from an analysis point. Let's talk about the treble first, because both of these IEMs kind of have their merits, and I would say that the OP22 does a far better job in this region, even though the Cipher by itself is a competent IEM, I would say. But the competence only stays when it's pitted across other IEMs, and unless it's an OP22, the Cipher will look nice. But when the OP22 comes in the picture, it's a gone case. There's nothing to recover about. It's outclassed, it's out-leveled, and the quality that the OP22 has, like, it actually reminded me of the Truth Here Pure, and that's how good the OP22 is, that it reminded me of something which is priced significantly higher compared to something that's priced in the same segment or lower. So when it comes to the bass, the OP22 has the proposition of switches, and I preferred it in the bass on mode, because despite that switch turning on, which I think contributes to a 5 to 6 dB level of bass increase, it still did not muddy up the entire sound. Like, there was a bit of bloom observed on the OP22 when I was playing through those tracks, but the Cipher just comes out straight up bloated compared to the OP22, where I would say that some polish was of course warranted in that position, but if you don't want it, you can just flick the switch off and you can enjoy the leaner presentation. And when it comes to the mid-range, again, no contest, the OP22 wins, period. So that's about it for the comparisons. And when it comes to the concluding notes, I would like to add another thing, that the Cipher comes in a very peculiar shell. It's not really molded in a different way. Like if you can see the contouring of the shell, if you can see the contouring of the shell, it's made in a way where the intertragal notch and the pinna, these are the areas. I'll link up the picture of the ear anatomy as well. So when you wear the Cipher, the intertragal notch and the pinna areas are so stress free, you can have the IEM for hours. And that's one of the best things about the Cipher. Like even though it does come off a bit short in terms of the sound, it doesn't really compromise on the comfort, and that's important. Like if you are marketing something as the Cipher like as a gaming IEM, I think comfort is one of the things that you need to prioritize on. The Cipher does well on that regard. And when it came to imaging, when it came to perceived soundstage, I would say that the Cipher did decent. I would say in terms of imaging, the Cipher was a damn good IEM. Stage was adequate. I would say it's not very narrow, it's not very down in terms of height, and it doesn't really make you feel claustrophobic. But EarAcoustic does really need to work upon how they make the lows perception go here. So 2 important questions. Will I buy it at retail? I would have to say in the form of a reluctant yes. Would I buy it used? Absolutely. I think this is one IEM where it gives you more value if you can pick it up used, because if you're buying new, just spend a bit more and get the OP22, I would say. That's about it for the EarAcoustic Cipher. I hope you like this review and it helps you in your purchase decisions. There'll be more budget IEMs down the line. Just stick with me and stay hydrated, stay well. Monk Bruce Audio signing out. Bye-bye.